Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving straight into some seriously wild, deeply complex lore from our source material regarding the Zeta star reptilians. We are looking at a massive narrative here, one that spans millions of years, tracing the history of an extraterrestrial species from their arrival on prehistoric Earth all the way to their current role in a cosmic, spiritual hierarchy. According to the text in this book, Reptilians Strike Back I, this specific extraterrestrial group undergoes a completely dramatic transformation over the course of Earth's history. The text outlines a remarkable journey, shifting them from what are described as savage invaders and genetic colors, right up to becoming spiritual protectors of humanity. To really wrap our heads around this highly structured narrative, we're going to map out their journey chronologically across 5 distinct phases. We've got 1, the strongest Zeta aliens, 2, arrival and natural selection, 3, giant forms in early battles, 4, Mu Empire's defense minister, and finally, 5, transformation to guardian deities.
Okay, let's kick things off with Phase 1, the strongest Zeta aliens.
So, who exactly are we talking about here? Well, the source material defines the Zeta Star aliens as the absolute core, the mainstream faction of the reptilian forces. Originating from the Zeta Star within the Magellanic Clouds, they're presented as this overwhelmingly powerful group. In fact, the text notes they actually refer to themselves as emperors. These guys aren't some fringe group. In the lore of this book, they are the largest, most dominant extraterrestrial force to arrive on early Earth, carrying a highly aggressive, battle-hardened nature from all the intense competition on their home world. Moving right along to Phase 2, arrival and natural selection.
Now, the text frames their early purpose on Earth strictly around the concept of survival of the fittest. When they first touched down, they weren't just random conquerors. Actually, scratch that. They saw themselves more like cosmic gardeners, enforcing a brutal natural order. Their stated mission was to actively consume and eradicate what they deemed to be bad genes. By eliminating the weak, the evil, or the evolutionary dead ends, their ultimate goal was to preserve superior races, leaving only those with future potential. It's a pretty extreme form of genetic culling, completely driven by a predator's logic.
This brings us to Phase 3, giant forms and early battles. To pull off this kind of brutal culling, you need the physique for it, right? And the source vividly details them as monstrous giants dropping right into prehistoric combat. The text explains they were equipped with 3 eyes and 4 arms, and upon their initial arrival, they weren't just facing off against early humans. No, they were fighting massive prehistoric monsters. The book notes that many of their very first wave actually perished because they were going toe-to-toe with Earth's primary dinosaurs. It was a literal clash of titans for apex predator status. To put that into perspective, the text states, these beings initially stood an immense 20 meters tall. The source explicitly compares their original appearance to a colossal King Kong. However, the lore mentions that Earth's heavy gravity was ultimately just too much for forms of that size, forcing them over time to shrink down to a more manageable, though definitely still terrifying, 5 meters in height. The text notes their early days on Earth were intensely violent and honestly genuinely bizarre. Aside from warring with dinosaurs, the source material casually drops that they used Bigfoot-like creatures as pets. They even rode them for transportation. And staying completely on brand with their mission of genetic culling, they actively hunted and consumed early humans. If the human population was deemed bad or evolutionarily inferior by their standards, they were simply eaten. The Zeta Star aliens viewed this as necessary cosmic pruning. So following this timeline, you can really trace their physical and societal evolution. We start way back in the prehistoric era, where they are massive apex predators barely surviving against dinosaurs. Then we move into early humanity, where they act as towering predators culling human populations. But this third step is where the story shifts dramatically. As human societies advanced, so did the reptilians, and they eventually integrated themselves directly into the organized structures of ancient human civilizations.
Which leads us perfectly into Phase 4, Mu Empire's defense minister.
Instead of acting as rogue slaughterers, the text explains they became highly disciplined officials. In the legendary Mu Empire, their immense combat power was recognized and officially utilized. They were appointed as ministers of defense and outer guards. The source uses a really cool mandala metaphor to explain this setup. Highly intellectual beings were placed at the very center of society, while the fierce, combat-driven Zeta Star aliens were positioned on the absolute outer edges. Their new job? Harnessing that aggressive nature to repel foreign invaders and protect the Empire. They finally found a purpose that utilized their strength for defense rather than just pure destruction. And that leads us to our final stage, Phase 5, Transformation to Guardian Deities. The source material describes how these fierce, battle-hardened beings experienced a massive shift in loyalty. They were deeply moved by the ruler of the Mu Empire, Lamu. According to the text, Lamu possessed a unique, gentle authority. It wasn't the violent, domineering power the reptilians were so used to on their homestar. It was an authority completely steeped in compassion and wisdom. This encounter with a totally different kind of strength prompted a profound shift in their very souls. It was their first real step away from relying solely on physical dominance. And this creates such a striking contrast. The text details how they evolved from being these ruthless exterminators into Dharmapalas, or guardian deities. Having embraced the Elkantari faith, they no longer use their power to indiscriminately consume or conquer. Instead, the source claims they now dedicate their immense, towering strength solely to protecting the righteous and fighting off evil spiritual forces. Their entire existence has been repurposed by faith. So, as we wrap up this explainer, I really want you to consider the immense scope of this narrative presented in the text. From 20-meter-tall beings battling dinosaurs, all the way to becoming disciplined guardians of a spiritual faith, it is just a staggering arc. It leaves us with a fascinating question. How does the ultimate force of destruction become the ultimate force of spiritual protection? It's a remarkable look at how ancient lore can reframe raw power, suggesting that absolutely any force in the cosmos, no matter how terrifying, can be transformed by the right kind of authority. Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive into the source material.